Most players will spend months comparing Wilson, Babolat, Head, and Yonex. They will watch pro match footage, scroll through gear forums at midnight, read every spec sheet they can find. And after all of that research, they will walk into a tennis shop and buy the same racket that most club players already have on their shoulders. That's not a coincidence. That's a marketing machine doing exactly what it was built to do. Here is what the machine does not want you to know. Some of the most respected, most performance-driven rackets available in the American market right now are coming from brands that spend almost nothing on celebrity endorsements. No primetime ads, no ATP tour billboards, just quietly excellent rackets earning loyal followings from coaches, advanced players, and the kind of gear-obsessed tennis enthusiasts who actually hit with 5 different frames before making a decision. Today, we're counting down 5 of those brands. 5 racket companies that deserve far more attention than they currently receive. If you have been shopping by logo and wondering why you still have not found your perfect frame, this video might be the redirect you needed. Starting at number 5, and this one surprises almost everyone. Mizuno is one of the most respected sporting goods companies on the planet. Their running shoes are legendary. Their baseball gloves are considered among the best ever made. Their volleyball gear has outfitted international programs for decades. In golf, Mizuno irons have a devoted following that borders on religious. The brand's reputation for Japanese craftsmanship and precision engineering is not marketing language. It's a real and well-documented identity built over more than a century. So here's what's strange. Ask the average American tennis player whether Mizuno makes rackets, and most of them will look at you blankly. That's the gap this brand is hiding in. Mizuno's return to tennis rackets has been quality-focused rather than hype-driven. The AcroSpeed line in particular has drawn consistent praise from independent reviewers and serious players who actually put in the time to demo the frames. The feedback pattern is almost always the same. The feel is more refined than the brand's tennis market visibility would suggest. The build quality reflects what Mizuno does across every other sport it competes in. These are not frames that cut corners to hit a price point. They're built to a standard, and that standard is visible the moment you pick one up. The problem is that most players never even think to look. Mizuno's tennis presence sits in the shadow of its much louder sporting reputation in other categories. That shadow is your buying opportunity. A racket brand with this level of craftsmanship credibility, operating this quietly in the tennis space, is worth a serious demo before you commit to another Wilson or Babolat you found on a sponsored Instagram post. The players who have made that call are not going back. Number 4 is where the list gets genuinely unusual. Fury is a name that most recreational players, most club players, and honestly most serious competitive players have never encountered. That's not an exaggeration. If you walk through 10 different tennis facilities and mention Fury, there's a real chance you won't find a single person who's held one. That level of under-the-radar status would usually be a red flag. In this case, that's the whole point. Fury has positioned itself as a boutique, player-first racket company. The focus is on customizable performance characteristics and real playability without the premium brand price inflation that comes from funding a team of tour-level endorsers. The Arma Pro 5, too, is the frame that keeps coming up when serious players and independent reviewers actually sit down with the lineup. Value and playability are the 2 things that get mentioned every single time. This is not an entry-level racket dressed up with aggressive branding. It's a performance tool for players willing to look past the label, and the players who find it tend to wonder why it took them so long. The price point makes that question even harder to answer. The buyer type here is curious. It's the club player who has already been through several mainstream rackets and started to wonder whether there's something better that nobody is talking about. It's the gear enthusiast who actually enjoys discovering what the mainstream market has left behind. Fury rewards that mindset. The moment where a player says they have never even seen one on court is real, and it is often followed quickly by a pause and then a reaction. This actually plays well, which makes the whole discovery feel genuinely worth it. Number 3 is a completely different story. This one is an unknown. This one is a former giant, and what's happened to its visibility is genuinely one of the more surprising things in modern tennis equipment. Prince used to be everywhere. In the history of tennis racket innovation, Prince occupies a foundational position. The brand did not just participate in the evolution of the modern racket, it helped drive it. The oversized frame, the wide body concept, and the string pattern innovations changed how the sport was played at every level. For a generation of competitive players, Prince was the premium choice. That legacy is real, and it still carries weight with experienced players who remember what this brand stood for. The surprise is where Prince sits today. Despite that heritage, despite that credibility, the brand has almost completely disappeared from mainstream tennis conversation. Walk into a club, scroll through a gear forum, watch a tour match. Prince is barely visible in any of those spaces right now. But here is what the current lack of visibility is masking. Prince is still building excellent rackets. The Phantom line and the ATS TechStream models continue to receive strong, consistent praise from experienced players and independent reviewers. The feedback is not nostalgic, and nobody is saying, well, for a legacy brand, it is decent. The response is straightforwardly positive. Feel, control, comfort, and playability are all getting called out as genuine strengths. These frames hold up well against anything the more visible brands are releasing at similar price points. For all court players and advanced club competitors, Prince is one of the most underutilized options on the market right now. The gap between this brand's actual racket quality and its current level of mainstream attention is as wide as anything on this list. If you have never demoed a Phantom purely because you assume Prince was not relevant anymore, that assumption is worth testing. Now we shift from a forgotten giant to one of the fastest growing challengers in the modern game. Diadem is an American tennis company, and it is one of the genuinely exciting stories in the equipment space right now. The brand has built real, visible momentum in a short period of time, and it hasn't done it through a roster of ATP superstars or glossy ad campaigns. It's done it by making rackets that actually play well and pricing them in a way that makes the competition harder to justify. The Elevate and Nova lines have become the proof of concept. Reviewers consistently mention feel, spin access, and value as the standout characteristics. These are not hollow talking points. They're showing up across independent reviews, player communities, and coaching circles with enough consistency to suggest that Diadem is not a flash in the pan. Coaches and competitive players have been picking these frames up not because of a marketing push, but because word of mouth from other serious players sent them there. That kind of momentum is almost impossible to manufacture, and Diadem hasn't tried to manufacture it. The growth trajectory is real, and the performance reputation is being earned the right way. The price points are aggressive without feeling cheap, and the frames themselves back up every claim the brand makes about what they were built to do. For competitive juniors and tournament-level adults looking for a modern performance racket that doesn't carry an inflated brand sponsorship premium, Diadem is one of the smartest purchases you can make right now. What you're actually getting for the price point is difficult to argue against, and more players are starting to figure that out every single month. Which brings us to number 1. Solinco did not start as a racket company. Solinco built its credibility through strings. And not just any strings. Solinco strings became favorites among some of the most serious players and coaches in the game. Hyper G and Tour Bite became names that gear-obsessed players threw around with real conviction. The brand earned a genuine performance reputation in one of the most technically demanding categories in tennis equipment before it ever sold a single racket frame. That foundation matters more than most people realize. When Solinco moved into rackets, the serious player community did not treat it as an unknown brand trying to break into a crowded market. They treated it as a company that had already proven it understood what performance-focused players actually need. That is an enormously different starting position than most racket companies ever get to work from. Most brands spend years trying to build that kind of credibility. Solinco walked in with it already established. The whiteout and blackout models have delivered on that foundation. Reviews from advanced players and independent sources consistently highlight control, feel, customization potential, and player-focused design as the defining characteristics of these frames. The language used is not polite or hedged. Players who find their way to Solinco rackets tend to become committed. The loyalty rate among the brand's users is one of its most telling data points, and it is not something you manufacture through advertising. This is also a brand that has built almost all of its racket momentum without the kind of endorsement ecosystem that Wilson, Babolat, and Head rely on. No top 5 ATP players, no primetime visibility, just a string company that understood its players deeply, built a racket to match exactly what those players were asking for, and let the performance results drive every conversation from there. For competitive players and serious gear enthusiasts, Solinco represents something genuinely rare in the modern tennis market. A brand that earned trust before asking for money. A racket that gets recommended because of how it plays, not because of who is holding it on a stadium court under sponsor lighting. Here is the bottom line after all of this. The most recognized name in a tennis shop is not automatically the best racket in that shop. Tour associations do not determine engineering quality, and the brand spending the most on advertising is rarely the one that put that money into the product. The sharpest buyers separate brand recognition from actual racket quality, and that separation is what every brand on this list is built on. Mizuno brought a century of craftsmanship into a space where most players never thought to look. Fury built real performance into a frame almost nobody has seen on a court. Prince kept engineering excellent rackets while the mainstream conversation moved on. Diadem earned its reputation through performance rather than promotion. And Solinco built trust through strings before it ever asked you to buy a frame. Demo before you commit, and stop paying a premium for a story when the frame you actually need has been sitting on the shelf the whole time. Which racket do you think should have made the list? Drop it in the comments. I'll be reading every one.